All right, so the Super Bowl turf was slick. Why? I've heard a bunch of different theories. I'm behind, right? I just got back from vacation, so I've been gone for a week. Just got back, so I'm behind on this, but that has given me a lot of time to talk to Spin Martin, has given Spin Martin a lot of time to talk to a lot of his colleagues and all these people that he knows in the turf industry. If you don't know who Spin Martin is a turf pro. He runs a social media page called Pro Turf Talks. They're on Discord, they're on Instagram, and probably some others, but you can look them up on Pro Turf Talks. But Spin and I have talked a lot over the years. And I've had a lot of fun learning a ton from Spin Martin. But just to give you a little bit from his credentials, Spin was the head groundskeeper for the Panthers, NFL, like Carolina Panthers, from 1994 to 1998. And then he was the head groundskeeper for the Colts from 99 to 2009. And he's worked on the Super Bowl turf crew 15 times. So 15 of those years of the Super Bowl, Spin was there on the ground. He has not, disclaimer, he was not there a week ago. He was not there for the Super Bowl in Arizona. This year, 2022. So anyway, I've talked to Spin quite a bit, and Spin has been fine-tuning his theory and the real reason why the turf was so slick at the Super Bowl. It's not a theory that you've heard yet, because I've watched all the videos that are out there, and everybody's talking about all these different reasons, and this is different, and it makes a whole lot more sense. So real quick, I just want to throw out there, Spin is not, I am not, no one's pointing any fingers, no one's casting any blame. And that's a big part of this story, actually, and we'll get more into that in here just a little bit. But I'm not going to try to name any names other than Spin, just to give him credit, because this is his theory. This is why he thinks the grass was slick. And I'm also going to talk about George Toma, but more just to protect his reputation than anything. So the theories as to why the grass was slick. The first one that I heard was, it's all the paint. They're painting way too much. They put down so much paint, that's why it's slick. It's not why it was slick. They did the paint the same way they paint every college football field for every game. They paint, not every, okay, so they paint, most of the big college football fields. They paint NFL fields. They do it every week throughout the football season. They painted it the same as they do every Super Bowl this year. It was not the paint. So that's what I've been thinking. Spin has kind of been mentoring me through this week and talking about why this was slick, and he's been giving me little crumbs and trying to teach me to think critically and figure out why this was happening. And basically what you have to do is think logically, deductive reasoning, and figure out what is different about the Super Bowl grass this year than what has been on any other football field up to this point. So the paint, it was not different, it was the same. So that can't be why it was slick, right? Because it wasn't slick before. Why would it all of a sudden be slick now? All right, so the next one, Tahoma 31. Tahoma 31 is the reason why the grass was, or the Tahoma 31 itself is slick. I'm a Tahoma 31 lover, so let's throw that out there. Left Tool, my brother, he got it right around the corner from me, right after the Razorbacks put it on their football field. Mostly just because we had the same grass as the Razorbacks. Woo, pig suey. But also because it's awesome. It looks amazing. It's super thick and it's great. As far as a Bermuda grass, I mean, mwah. Anyway, I'm a lover, so there's a disclaimer there, because you're like, oh, you're just defending Tahoma 31, but I couldn't care less what they do. In fact, if it was Tahoma 31 that didn't work out for NFL fields, maybe it would be cheaper, and then I could do my whole golf course back here. So I might have an interest in it being the reason for it being slick. Anyway, it's not the reason. Tahoma 31 is used on lots of NFL fields. There's a handful of them, including Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Eagles have Tahoma 31. It was played on 2 weeks earlier. Now, we'll get to that in a second, because Spin told me that's something a little bit different about their field. It's not just Tahoma 31, so we'll get there. But also, the University of Arkansas Razorbacks have played on it for a few years now. And in fact, let me read this, because I looked this up specifically because I had seen this somewhere. The Sports Field Managers Association named the Razorbacks football field, what is it here? 2022 College Football Field of the Year. I don't think that if it was even remotely slick that the Sports Field Managers Association would be naming it as College Football Field of the Year in 2022. That's Tahoma 31. Again, Philadelphia Eagles, I think I heard that the Titans play on Tahoma 31. The Chicago Bears, and Justin Fields was running all over the place this season on that stuff. It's not slick just by itself. It's not a slick grass. So anyway, it's not the Tahoma 31. That is not the reason why the field was slick. So the predominant theory that I've heard, the one that everyone's sort of settling on, is the ryegrass overseed. The theory is that they overseeded at a much higher rate than what they normally do. This is also not the case. Again, I don't know any of this stuff. Spin Martin has been mentoring me through this week. We've been talking a lot about it, and he was kind of like teasing me with little bits of information. And so I was like, okay, the ryegrass, that's what I had heard from other people talking about it. And Spin knows people who know people. They did not overseed with some exorbitant amount of ryegrass for the Super Bowl this year. These are all like the top people in the industry that are on the crew that are taking care of the Super Bowl grass. They didn't just try something new and just throw out a bunch of extra and go, we'll see what happens. They're using tried and true practices to make the best sports turf possible for the Super Bowl. So Spin assures me, he says, no, it was not some crazy, like doubled, of normal rate for Super Bowl ryegrass overseed. Okay, so what's missing? Actually, no, let's stop here real quick because I wanted to address a conspiracy theory. Barstool Sports made up a conspiracy theory about George Toma. The conspiracy theory goes, and now I'll say, they don't even believe this is true. They just made it up for the views and didn't think about, probably did, or didn't care about the repercussions it would have on the reputation of a man who has been so well respected in the sports turf industry for a long time. Like the front runner, like the guy who he's done so much in sports turf, and Spin has told me a lot about George Toma. And anyway, and Barstool Sports throws out this conspiracy theory that George Toma is a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so that he wanted the Kansas City Chiefs to win, so he made it slick and then gave them a heads up. I told Spin, I was like, that seems kind of silly, because if you were going to try to make a sports field slick and give one team an advantage, would you really use the exact type of grass that the other team has? The Philadelphia Eagles are playing on Tahoma 31 that's overseeded, right? So why would you do Tahoma 31 overseeded with ryegrass and make that an advantage for the Kansas City Chiefs? Now, when I said that to Spin, Spin said, now what's really interesting about that is that the Philadelphia Eagles are playing on what he called a grid system. And how he explained it to me was that basically there's an artificial turf sprig, put every half inch or something like that, that's at the same height as the grass. So it's an artificial turf grid that's holding the Tahoma 31 in place, and then they're overseeding over that. But basically, it makes an amazing footing for a turf field. So, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you didn't talk to your sports field manager who might have given you a heads up that it was going to be a little bit different, you just know, we're playing on the same type of grass that we normally do, then maybe you went in thinking, we're going to use the same cleats we always do on this grass where we have an amazing footing, and it was different than what they were expecting. Interesting things going on there. There's some interesting little tidbits, little pieces here and there. But basically, I thought that the conspiracy theory being made up was wrong. Again, because they didn't care the effects it would have on the reputation of George Toma. And that, anyway, you get where I'm going with that. But throw out that conspiracy theory. It's nonsense. Okay, so let's move on now. What was different about the Super Bowl grass this year than what has happened in football before? So we established all these other things, all these other theories, that nothing was different. Those things have been done, and it wasn't slick before. I'm going to read you a little bit of an interview that happened on Monday. I'm pretty sure it was called Monday Morning with the Sod Father. Let's see if I can give you a sports or a source. lvsportsbiz.com is where I'm right now. But this is an interview of George Toma. And this is what Spin sent me this. And he's giving me these little tidbits. He's saying, see if you can figure it out. Nobody else is figuring it out. And I'm like, okay. So he sent me this and I read it and it went over my head. Like I totally missed it. I threw out some things and he was like, no. And then he explained it to me. So we'll get there. But here's the interview with George Toma. And see if I can find the part where he says, okay, as far as, this is a quote, this is George Toma talking, as far as the slippage, it did need a little more sand. The grass was brought in on Wednesday because they had rehearsals and they put extra seats behind the goalpost. So that's a direct quote. And it even says in the article that George Toma says it in his down-to-earth speaking style. George Toma is not pointing fingers. He's not playing the blame game. In fact, George Toma has kind of just taken the heat and not defended himself. He's just like, all right, because people are, it was George Toma's fault and this and this and that, and they're all over the internet, you're seeing this sort of stuff. And he just kind of went, and just said, well, this is kind of what happened. So he's very, he's not, shaking his fist or finger at anybody. Okay, so he said, then it's this other quote, it was brought in on Wednesday and it stayed in there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Here's more of the quote. With all the rehearsals, that's pounding on the grass and it puts more moisture in there, he said. The field did take a beating from the entrance 30 feet wide and 60 feet long and was kind of wet from pounding, pounding, pounding. A little more sand would have helped. We couldn't do much after Wednesday. So I read that. Spin sent me that, and he was like, so did you figure out why or whatever? And I was like, okay, so the rehearsals. That's what's different about the Super Bowl is there's a whole week worth of stuff leading up to the Super Bowl. And Spin sent me like a typical schedule of what happens for like leading up to the Super Bowl. You know, they have like they travel in on Monday. There's press day. Wednesday, they paint. Usually they start painting. Teams practice at other locations. There's rehearsals, there's pictures, there's team pictures. They want the field looking really nice at some point during the week because they want the team to take pictures in there. And then the big thing that George Tomer was referencing, the rehearsal for the halftime show happens like all day on Friday. At least that's what Spin said in his experience what it was. It could be, you know, maybe it was a little bit on Thursday and a little bit on Friday. Maybe it was all day on Thursday. It doesn't matter. George Tomer was saying all that rehearsal, beating down on the grass, brought the moisture out of the grass. So, what was different about the Super Bowl from previous football games? And again, this was Spin, and he finally he said, read it very slowly. When George Thomas said, let's show a little video while I'm talking about this. The video from the TCU Michigan game, only to show you what happens when they bring that tray in. They bring the tray in, and then they bring the seats in behind it, and they set everything up right there behind the tray. So it got brought in on Wednesday. They set all the seats up and everything was in its final resting place and it had it all the way they wanted it and all this sort of stuff. So the turf crew is doing their thing. They're probably watering the grass, probably going through all this, and then the grass takes a beating from all the traffic that's been across it with all the players and the pictures and the Super Bowl rehearsal. The halftime show rehearsal was probably the big one, and that's the one that George Tomer referenced specifically. So all of that moisture being brought to the top of the grass blade, it never went back outside. The stands got put in place, and once those are there, the field, they'd have to take it back out for the field to exit the stadium. Again, you could make this as blamey or as just like easygoing of a statement as you want, but it doesn't matter how you say who said or he said or they weren't able to or couldn't do this. When they wanted to take the field outside, they couldn't or weren't allowed to let it go out and dry out in the sun. The field came in, got locked in, then got beat down by the Super Bowl halftime show performance crew setting up the stage and all the equipment taken there and all the weight of the stage and all the people. And then Spin educated me on this. When grass is in the shade, well, and you know this, I guess, just by thinking about it, like what do plants do when they're competing for sunlight? They grow, they put more energy into growing straight up. So root development stops because they need to put more energy into trying to find the light. The grass blades think they're being shaded out by the surrounding grass. And so they're competing for sunlight and there's none there. So the root development stops, which would be why grass was more easily uprooted and being able to be pulled out when cleats are trying to grip into it, because the grass didn't go back outside after Wednesday. You have to realize, like I said, we're protecting basically the reputation of George Tomer because everyone's pointing the finger. He doesn't have the final say. The turf crew in general doesn't exactly get to do whatever they want. They have to make the field look amazing, and the difference for normal, Super Bowls in general is that there's so much more going on the field right up to game time. So they have to plan accordingly. But what was different this year is that there was a tray where the grass was, this is something new, like two stadiums now, Las Vegas and in Arizona, they have these tray systems where it's grown outside and then they bring it in for the game, they can put it back outside, grow it and do whatever they want outside. But there's not a ton, I was trying to look for like a source that said, the effects on turf grass of being grown in the sunlight and then being taken into the shade for days and days. there is no research on that because this is a new thing. That doesn't happen. That's not normal for grass. It grows in the sun and stays in the sun. So this is a new thing. And the effects of this are something that are going to have to be studied more because they're going to have to prepare. Now, something that's different for next year, Las Vegas, their tray system you don't have to take the seats out. So they can take it out and bring it back in whenever they want. You don't have to go through a whole process. It's just like, let's out and back in. I mean, there's a process. But anyway, so next year, it should be easier to take the grass outside and let it dry out after all of this traffic, after all of this stress, and let the grass get some sunlight so that it can grow better roots and then not be so stressed where all the moisture comes to the top. Anyway, I thought it was super interesting. So that was the takeaway, was Spin has come up with this, you'd say theory, but it's, to me, the only thing that makes sense. And I guess you're saying, okay, it's not the ryegrass. The ryegrass is the grass, but there's also Bermuda in there. So all of the grass is going through the same effect of being in the shade, no sunlight for days and days. Anyway, but that's the piece everyone was missing, was it's the tray did not get taken back out after Wednesday. So between giving Spin some credit for that, and then also protecting the reputation of someone who's been the front runner, been like the most respected name in sports turf for a long time. And all of a sudden, all this stuff, and the last time he's going to do the Super Bowl field, this happens. Just please, that's what I'm asking of you. You can say the rest of this is stupid, oh, that doesn't make any sense, and whatever, and Toma 31 sucks, and that's fine. But George Toma is not to blame, and I think he's even more respectable for not pointing the finger and playing the blame game and all this. He just sort of took it, and in passing was like, yeah, it would have been nice to have gotten that field back outside to dry out. Anyway, hope you found it interesting. I'm going to tell Spin if there's anything I said wrong, because I'm not a turf pro at all. And so if I said something wrong, I'll tell Spin, he can comment, and I'll pin his comment so you guys can see where he wants to make corrections here and there or just clarify something. So you can go search for that in the comments. I'll put that article that I just read the interview from. I'll put the link down in the description. Anyway, I thought it was super interesting, so I hope you guys did too. And we'll see you later, all right? Have a good one.